And I was a little nervous, at that point about going, but I was like, no, I think we're still at a point where I can go. And I just remember I was, staying away from everybody, and just a guy in the audience just walks up. It's very rural Iowa, and just walks up like 10 feet away, points at me and goes, "If we get it, it's from you." I was like, okay, great.
Try and be a better person, try to do more good things. Here's what I don't like, though. I don't like every time you go to the store, they try and force you to donate at the register, right? Because whenever you say no, you feel bad, The other day I was at the store, and they're like, "Sir, would you like to donate $1 for lung cancer research?" And I was like, "Just the Marlboros, please." And that feels terrible no matter how many times it happens, I was like, "Oh, I found an extra $1. Do you guys have any lighters?"
That's Jim Flannigan. I'm Tim Schlegel. This is Stand Up, Sit Down. I'm here in the studio today with Jim Flannigan. Jim, welcome.
Thanks, man. How are you?
Good. You?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. This is an honor. It's a thrill. The legendary comics
now
have
I
sat
know
in
you're
this
just
chair.
yanking me.
No, man. It's been great. And the comics you've had sit here so far, it's an incredible roster. It's a thrill to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's you well deserve it. This is probably one of the more interesting things. The comics I think I've had up until this point, I think, are all pretty much full-timers.
Yeah.
But you have never wanted to do that.
It's been a mixed bag. I was really close when the pandemic happened. I was very close. I recorded my first album March 6th and 7th of 2020. And so everything was kind of on a trajectory.
Yeah, that's right there.
The week later, it was, and I'm thankful I got it in. Like, everything worked out perfectly. But yeah, so it was always kind of, I'm pretty ADHD, and I need a bunch of things going on to kind of, to keep my mind at bay. So I've always maintained like a sales gig and comedy, but they're two things you can really work together if you do it right.
Sure. Yeah, it's similar skill set.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my family's all in sales.
Yeah.
So it's and you not only the difference is that you have to sell yourself every week.
Oh man, and that's a big difference because like you do it during the day. I don't want to do it at night. You know what I mean? Like every time, so like promoting shows and things like that is always something that's like, I've done sales all day. I don't want to, I just want to go up there and tell jokes. I just want that piece of it. So it's always been kind of a balance to try and figure out how to do both. But it's been fun.
And so you have not done a lot of road then?
I have.
You have done road too?
That's the nice thing about being
able to squeeze it in?
Yeah, it's a nice thing about, doing sales is that a lot of it you can do from wherever you are. And clubs nowadays are mostly Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's some Wednesday through Saturday, right? But you can really, I can manage both. I've been able to manage both, but mostly Midwest, I would say. I do Brad Garrett's in Vegas every year. But outside of that, most of the road I do are either corporates, so they're like one night in and out, or within 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah, that's about the limit.
Yeah.
It's a 6-7 hour drive? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because, anything more than that, if I need to, I'll fly. I'll do some of that stuff for sure. But just there's also enough right around here. We're in a great spot in Chicago where you can book a year within 6 or 7 hours for the most part, So it's made it a little bit easier.
That's nice. You were talking about your CD. You've recorded this, your first CD. You recorded it right before the pandemic.
Snuck it in, man. Like, people were making jokes, like, should we be here? And we didn't really know yet, We're like, what are they talking about? I got to watch the news more. And then
we're gonna probably be wearing masks. No way, we're not Japanese.
And and we were so ignorant to what was happening at that point, just around us. Like, it was a blessing to be able to get that many people in that room, one last time, because I did Zany's Rosemont. And
sold it out?
Yeah, 4 shows.
Oh, wow.
Friday, Saturday. So it was great. Everything was, and like nothing can stop me now. It would take the craziest thing in the world happening to stop this momentum. And it did.
That's nice. How much promotion did you have to do to sell out 4 shows? Did they help with the promotion?
They did a little bit. They were really nice. Rick Geezer was great about getting me on the radio. Some friends of mine in TV from Comcast Sports reached out and were like, we want to have you in studio for some stuff. Some podcasts I do with Pat McGann was going really well, and so a bunch of people came out from that. And I don't know, there was just a demand for it, and it was great. It was so much fun. It was like a taste of that, that rising stock, just to give me just enough of it, and then pull it all away. So that was fun.
A week later, it was my last gig. My last gig was a bowling alley in Michigan.
Oh, so similar.
Same,
for sure.
It was. I know it was March 15th.
Okay.
So that's when everything. I know that I just marked that as that's the date I know that everything started shutting, because it had started a little before that. I was actually the way I pushed CDs that night was I gave away a free roll of toilet paper. Because I had just stocked up, and I said, well, here's a gimmick, and, ha, ha, ha,
Right.
we're running out of toilet paper, ha, ha, ha. Well, this will be over in a month, so let's make fun of it now.
I love it. Mine was...
So I know it was March 15th, so it was right on there.
Yeah, my last gig, so I actually did one gig the 14th, that same weekend. I had a show in Iowa, and everything else I had that week had canceled, and that one didn't. And I was a little nervous, at that point about going, but I was like, no, I think we're still at a point where I can go. And I just remember I was, staying away from everybody, and just a guy in the audience just walks up. It's very rural Iowa, and just walks up like 10 feet away, points at me and goes, "If we get it, it's from you." I was like, okay, great. Because they were all from the town. They all know each other. I'm the only outsider there. And they just made it very clear. If we get it, it's yours.
Patient zero.
Exactly. So thankfully they didn't. So we were good.
So you recorded all 4 shows, edited it down.
Yeah.
Is it out? Is the CD
It's about to be. So I signed with the label a couple of months back. I did most of it right, Tim, but I did just enough of it wrong. And that's one of those things I think just for stand-ups, like anyone who wants to record, I want to give them all the advice that I just didn't know, because I work pretty clean, and I know you work very clean as well. But I didn't work squeaky clean. I swore a little bit, and that's probably the worst place to be, because it's not quite clean enough to get to play on satellite radio. But,
man.
You know what I mean? So it's just enough to kind of knock you off of that, because that's where a lot of like the value in recording an album can come from, is getting it out there where a bunch of people who haven't heard any of your stuff can now get to hear it, right? But through satellite radio. So it was like just enough not to be able to do that, but also close enough to where it was like, well, if we tweak a few things here, we can clean this up. So I signed with a label recently that's kind of going through the process of doing all that, because they want to do a clean version for satellite radio, because I think there's a lot of value in that.
Sure.
So, but I wish I had thought about it ahead of time and just taken that extra time to just take out the little swear words that aren't needed. Those little accents that it was lazy.
Punctuation.
Yeah. And in hindsight, you're like, I was lazy as a comic. I could have done that completely without.
Yeah. So what I do is when I write a new bit,
man,
I just swear, and a couple of some sort of premise holding it together.
You get it.
And then as I work the bit, I try to take them out, and I try to find other words that fit.
You're like, I'm going to replace that with a joke. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly what you want to do. I agree.
And it's some of those are really hard to. Some bits I have just really hard to pull out that swear.
That's it, man.
It's nothing I've been able to write gets the biggest laugh is that one F-bomb.
Yeah, right? But at the same time, you know it, right? Because, and it's not for everybody. I just think the way we write, I think we're very much that same vein where the better the bit gets, the less of those are in there.
Yeah.
And you feel that. And so for me, it was just like, I wish I had just taken that extra 10, 15%, and really gone through and done my job better. But it's all good now. Everything's on the path. It should be coming out soon. I mean, it was a perfect combination of momentum halting, me not knowing that one little piece of it, just a lot of things together. But I'm excited for it to come out soon.
So are they doing like what they do on like on movies, where it's like the rental car scene from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
It's gonna be like, what the heck? Yeah, it's gonna be.
Gosh darn goodness!
It's all gonna be poorly dubbed in.
The sugar, are you?
That was the funny thing about it too, is I didn't always swear in the same spots. So because we did have the multiple recordings to be able to use, and some of them it was just like, oh, but we can just take this one and use that,
Oh, nice.
But there may be a few things where I like re-record a couple lines, but you want to do it in a way that's going to blend very easily, so it doesn't have that feeling of watching Die Hard on TNT going, I have the DVD. Why am I watching this bootleg version right now?
Because you just want to see that where the lips don't match up to the dialogue.
It's part of the fun, isn't it?
That's fun. So can you mention the label?
Yeah, they're a small group called On Tour Records. They've done a lot of stuff like Stuart Huff, Brent Terhune. So some comics have worked with them recently that have had some good success. They work specifically with comics. It's a guy, I wonder if you know him, Ross Duncliffe.
No.
He was a comic first, right, before he started a label, and so just so many times over the years, it's funny who you know, like who people know from comedy and who they don't know, right? Because it all just depends on where you were on a random weekend. If you've actually, it's like, oh yeah, I know that person. We happen to be booked in Duluth at the same time in 2007, or other people. It's like, no, I've been the week after them.
We weren't booked at the same club, but we were both working the same weekend, so we met up after the show.
You've had that too, right?
Yeah.
I love that, where it's like, hey, I'm in town, you're in town, neither one of us knows anyone here, and you're friends for the weekend.
And it kind of feels like rock and roll in the 50s to me. When Johnny Cash would be playing across town from Elvis, and it's like, hey, let's go drinking after the show.
Exactly. I was in Myrtle Beach, and I was having not a great week. Just everything about it was just a little off. Everything from the accommodations, the travel, and then the person I was going with couldn't go, so I was staying in this house 20 minutes away from the club all by myself. Just everything's just a little bit blah, And there was a comic who was working the other club in town who I didn't know, but I was like, hey, I'm here, I'm kind of bored. And he was Mike Merrifield, I don't know if you know him from Wisconsin, and he was like, let's hang. And then he saw the situation I was in, and he was like, oh no, all weekend I got you. So he's picking me up and driving me to the other club. It's just the weirdest thing. Imagine driving, someone who's competing with you to work every day, but it was really cool. And there's just that collegiality when you're on the road and the people you meet.
And we'll talk more about that after this break.
I recently found out that I'm losing my hair, which doesn't mean that I just started losing my hair, by the way. It means it's been happening in the back of my head where everyone but me can see it, and that sucks to find out last, My bald spot's been in my blind spot this whole time. That's something. And I found it the worst way possible. I walked in on a room full of my friends as they were making fun of someone for losing their hair, and by how quiet it got when I walked in, I figured out pretty quickly it was me they were talking about, So the only thing I could do, I went to the bathroom, I shut the door, I walked up to the mirror, and I started going like this really fast, like I was gonna catch the mirror not doing its job or something, like I've got that kind of speed, And I don't have that kind of speed. So I had to see how bad it was, I actually had to take a picture of the top of my head. And the only way to describe what I saw is, when you're watching a cell phone commercial and they show you the picture of the coverage map? But of their competitor, the really bad one, you guys know what I'm talking? That one's me. Like I'm really good along the coasts, no problems whatsoever. Major cities are fine, But as soon as you get south of the Mason-Dixon line, there's zero coverage remaining, right? And that sucks. I've been walking around for years thinking I was still Verizon. And it turns out I'm barely T-Mobile. And I'm a year and a half away from being Cricket.
And we're back with Jim Flannigan, looking very sprint this evening.
It hurts to watch that clip because now it just looks like a cartoon explosion in the middle. You know what I'm talking about? Where everything around it's still okay and just the middle is just blown up entirely. That's one of those bits I don't want to see or hear anymore. Do you enjoy watching yourself do stand-up?
Not at all.
Okay.
I can't stand it.
That's a tough thing to do, but I need to more. I know that because I talk too fast naturally, and when you see it, you're like, slow down. But when you're doing it, you're like, I just want to say more stuff. I just want to keep talking.
No, I know most comics are uncomfortable watching themselves. That's why I always start with that. It's good.
To make you feel as uncomfortable as possible.
It's my little domination
trick.
It.
I love it.
We were talking in the earlier segment about your CD. The release date? Do we have a release date?
Not quite yet. I think it's going to be end of September, early October. We're just getting everything finalized there, but should be not too distant future. I did know ahead of time that I would do everything I could to not listen to it, to not watch the footage, and I knew it was going to take me forever. So I did, going into it, know I was going to title it About Time. I have a joke where that's two of the words I use in it, but also I knew by the time it actually came out, it'd be like, well, it's about time. You recorded that way too long ago. I just didn't know what was going to happen to cause it. I didn't know it'd be a pandemic. I just thought it'd be my random laziness.
About Time is it's a good T-shirt slogan too. It's a good thing you can put on T-shirts and sell.
I kind of like it. It could mean so many different things, right? But all of them apply. It's like, oh, it's about time I finally recorded an album. It's about time it got released. Stand-up comedy's about time, right? Yeah. It's about how much time you have. It's about timing. So it was something that just meant a lot to me in a bunch of different capacities.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. Thanks.
And this is the first thing that you've had out. No, this will be your first item of merch.
It really will be.
This will be your first non-medical sales.
Yeah, really, it really is, which is a weird thing to think about, but like. Yeah, it's weird to have a consumable out there, I feel like. It's weird. To me, it's always been stand-up is in the moment. It's in the club. It's what's happening right there. Whether or not it's something you thought of on the spot or something you've been doing forever, it's always that moment. I've always been trepidatious of taking it out of that moment and just putting it on as something people just can consume whenever they want to, right? Because it's such a different feel than being in the environment that we love.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah, really. Fair enough. I should write that down.
Do you have a notebook? Do you keep a notebook? What do you do?
I'm the worst. I use my phone because I'm super ADHD. Whenever I get a new notebook, I'm so excited. It's the first day of school. Every time I'm like ready to crack it, got my pen ready to go, and about 3 pages in, that notebook never gets touched again. It's the epitome of who I am. Like if you look at my notebooks, they're just so much hope, and then the moment I start thinking of something else, I just forget about that notebook. It gets torn up. There's pages missing, but the rest of it's blank. So I've really been working on using the phone apps because that's something I can connect to anywhere. I still use notebooks. I just have about 100 of them sitting around my house, and they all have 3 to 4 pages of jokes in them, and then the rest of it's blank. It's weird, I know, but that's how I do things, right? That's the way I work.
Start and never finish.
Yeah, that's really.
So the CD is it's a finished product. It's complete.
It is, but it's still not out yet. But so it still kind of fits that vein. Tim, is this therapy? Am I going to therapy? Because it's working, Tim. Wow, I'm gonna go make a call when we get out of here.
So where did you start? Where did we?
2003. There was a little room in Mount Prospect. It was in the basement of a restaurant like all good comedy clubs are. Famous Freddy's in Mount Prospect. They had an open mic on Thursdays. And Vince Crone actually was doing his second open mic ever that night. And a bunch of other people a few of them still do a little stand-up here and there, but he was kind of the other one who really did it. And we tied to, it was a contest, which another thing stand-up comics love. I mean, I went about this all the right way. Yeah, it's another business and a contest. I want to do this. I'm in, But so it was a contest, and we actually tied for the victory of the contest.
You and Vince?
Yeah, him because he was funny, and me because I brought the most people. So they're like, we couldn't really let that guy lose. He's got like a bus here, they're gonna riot if he doesn't win. But this guy was good, So, but what it did was it made me come back the next week. Like I had a great set because my friends were there to laugh at me, and I wasn't any good. And then the next week I went back and we had to close the show. Whoever wins that week of the contest comes back and closes the following week. And so I had to come back and close it. And I was like, oh, I'm terrible at this.
Did you have to follow Vince?
I did.
Oh man.
I did. And I mean, either way, it wouldn't have mattered who I followed because my friends weren't there and it wasn't novel, my first time trying stand-up anymore. But it was the first thing where I was like, oh, I'm terrible at this, but I want to keep doing it. I want to figure it out and get better at it, And yeah, I took a long time off.
Did you know? Did you actually know that that the reason why you did so well at the one before? I mean, of course you know now.
Yeah.
But did you know in that moment that's the only reason why you did well because your friends were?
Man. No. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the difference was between then and now. Last week and this week, why it was so much different. Part of me was like, oh, they heard some of these last week. No, they did, and they didn't. They weren't going to remember them. Oh, you're not.
What I usually do is I would say, well, my friends are so much more sophisticated than these people. Apparently, I was shooting over their heads this week, and my friends got the jokes.
And it's such a hard thing because there were a couple of experienced comics there. I remember the only one that gave me any advice that mattered was the rudest one. He was just like, yeah, don't do any of that stuff ever again. But he was right.
Who was that?
Andy Lurie. He was around here for a while, but he was just like, yeah, what that thing you did, don't do that ever. I had a shirt with a joke on it. It was everything. I'm cringing now. I can't watch that clip, and that was okay comparatively. But so it was bad. But it was it just became my thing every Thursday. I went out there and I tried new jokes, and I didn't know there was more. It's funny because at the same time we were doing that on Thursdays, I would occasionally go to Naperville and check out Burt Borth's rooms. He had comedy in Lisle. But what I didn't know is while we're doing this like once a week dance with comedy, in the city, there's this massive scene that I had no idea existed because I was out in the burbs. So there was like Hannibal, TJ Miller, Kyle Kinane, Pete Holmes, every night out there, you know, just developing this huge scene. And I'm out in Mount Prospect thinking that, you know,
hey,
the
look at my
bee's
shirt.
knees. Yeah, exactly. Then I'm like, oh, but I got to go get my cheese fries upstairs. I see they're ready, you know, 'cause it's still a restaurant first that you're at, you know. So it was really, yeah, it took me a long time to figure out that like, oh, I want more from comedy. You know, I don't want this to just be a thing that's just a random part of my life. I took several years off before I really came back and like started putting effort into it.
So then you started hitting the scene in Chicago?
Yeah, but not right away. I mean, I would dabble in the scene and I would dabble on the road. I was lucky enough to have friends who were very funny and needed openers. And what I didn't know is if you're clean enough, likable enough, and you meet the right people, you know, at the time especially, they wanted to bring someone with them on the road. And it was a great way for me to get out there and just start doing a little bit longer sets. So I wasn't doing much of the city yet. 07, 08, I probably started dabbling in the city a little bit more. Like people would know who I was there then. But up until then, I've been doing it for probably 5 years, 30 miles away, and no one knew, you know, who I was. And so, but in 2010, I quit for about 4 years. And it wasn't until I came back late 2014 that I really started like, I want to go to the city. And then I was worse than brand new comics because the only thing worse than being an awful new comic is being an awful comic that now people have heard of. And they see you and you're like, this is terrible. But I was now 30 doing jokes that I wrote when I was 23, 24, like just coming back to it, you know?
Right.
So it made me go, oh, I need to figure out who I am if I'm gonna do anything with this, if I'm gonna do, you know, if I want to take it seriously at all. And it changed everything. It changed my career. I was looking to move to Minnesota for a gig, for the day job, and I started doing open mics again, and I was like, oh, I don't want that kind of stability. Who wants a paycheck and all those things? I want to go to open mics all the time, you know? But it was just like a reinvention for me, just getting back into stand-up and figuring out what do I want to do with this.
So you thought you wouldn't be able to do it in Minnesota, or was it a more serious job that you were?
Combination. Yeah, it was a more serious job. I would have to move there. I would have to start completely over. And it was at the same time where I was like starting to dip my foot in the water again with open mics. And it was like, well, I've got a little bit here. I know what I'm doing here. I know who the players are here. I'm not going to learn a new scene, start over at comedy, and learn a new job at the same time. You know? So it was the right opportunity to like, you know what? I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm gonna put some focus into stand-up. And it's made all the difference. I mean, like anything, right? The more time you put into it, the better you're going to be. Fascinating. I'd probably be better at jokes if those notebooks were fuller. You know what I mean? Some of it's self-fulfilling. We get that.
Yeah, absolutely. So any intention on going full-time comedy, or is it still?
We're going to break it right here. No, I don't know. I think, I mean, it was always one of those things where I kind of wanted to be forced into it. And I think I was at that tipping point where I was about to be forced into it. And right now it's really just getting, you know, my feet wet again, trying to figure out what's what, because everything was gone for so long, right? So I think eventually, yes, I just don't have the time frame in place just yet.
And we don't have any more time for this show. This is if you're watching this live on TV, that's the end of the show. Thank you, Jim, for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
And if you want to go check out the podcast, we have the bonus uncensored segment coming up next.
Let's do this.
Thanks for watching.
I just started donating blood. I think it's great. I think people should do it. I made a big mistake, though. I gave the blood people my phone number and got on that blood donation call list, and you can't say no to these people. They have, like, the world's greatest sales pitch, and they're cocky, too, you know? They walk around acting like it's their blood, and I'm just hanging on to it for a while, right? Guy calls the other day, and he's like, hi, Mr. Flannigan. My name is Bob, and I'm calling from Life Source Blood Bank, and I just wanted to let you know that there's a shortage of your blood type in your area, and every time you donate a pint of blood, it saves 3 lives. Hey, do you have time in your busy schedule tonight to come on out and save 3 people's lives? No thanks, Bob. kind of busy. He's like, hey, I get it, I'm also busy. What are you doing tonight that's more important than saving 3 people's lives? I'm going drinking, Bob. Had these plans for a while, and I like booze, you know?
And we're back on stand-up sit-down with the very rare comedy of Jim Flannigan.
Man, that was the first joke that, like, I turned into a bit. You know what I mean? Like, that was the first time, like, that was that joke for me. Because before that, when you're early on, you're writing jokes. And that was the first time it was like, oh, no, this has a button at the end. It wraps up. Like, do you remember that evolution in your career? Like, the first time you wrote something, you're like, oh, this is different. Like, this is another level than where I was before.
Yeah. There's been a few times, but it's always, my stuff has always kind of been that way, that it starts here and then goes around and comes to the end. My problem was always putting jokes between here and there.
We should work together. the comedy team of Slagle and Flannigan would crush.
Because it's, I've always felt it's, and you know, when I would do showcases, it would always be really hard because I'd have to say, just put your funniest lines together. The
first time.
Okay, here's a funny line. Do you know how much more drunk you'll get? You see, that doesn't work outside. You see, it doesn't. Once you take it out, because I've always all my bits have been like that.
Yeah.
So.
The first time we ever spent any time together, I don't think it was the first time I met you, but the first time I remember spending time with you was when Kevin Bozeman, our good friend, in episode 3. 4? Something. He was on the show. 1. I'm sorry.
Episode 1.
Episode 1. My apologies. He had a little like workshop of great comics.
Yeah, that was fun.
Working on like their tight 6-minute set. And I remember you saying that was one of the things that was, you're like, I don't know how to boil my act down into 6 minutes. And as a new comic, I'm like, must be nice, Tim. I don't have 6 good minutes, so must be nice to not be able to break it down to that small of a amount.
No, but that's the reason. It all one goes into the other, and I've tried to write one lines, and it comes out like a Leno routine.
Interesting. It's not what you want in 2021. No. I get that.
No, that was not meant complimentary.
You guys heard about this? You guys hear about this? Yeah, I get that. So have you always been that? Like, did you adapt to try and do anything different for that? I'm always curious because, like, I like talking to people who write in a much different way than me because, first of all, there's no crossover. Like someone who's a long ranter, I love what they do because it's not what I do, and I like seeing that and talking to those people, but I don't think I could do really long bits. Did you ever get to a point where you're like, I want to write shorter?
Yeah, because for like we said, for like, you know, you do showcases in that, you know, if you don't have the you know, laugh every 6 seconds, you put them to sleep.
Right.
It's I showcased for Last Comic Standing, and they give you 2 minutes. And so so I get up there and like, well, out on the Serengeti, if you've ever noticed, and Ant goes, I'm not amused by this.
Oh, come on. That's hard to hear from a comic too, because it's like, shut up, you know I know what I'm doing up here. Just shut up and let me get to it.
Right.
Yeah, I get that.
So it was, So I always wish I could write shorter, but it never really worked for me that way. I always have to have a concept that I want to hang the jokes on versus putting the jokes together in a concept. So
that makes sense. My biggest thing is premises. I don't know what I want to say, but once I have something to say, I feel like I can write jokes about it. But for me, it's trying to figure out what that next bit is to get excited about it and want to write about it.
So have you ever, because I've met comics that have donated blood for money. Have you ever sold plasma?
I've not sold plasma, but because of the amount of mileage I've gotten out of that bit, I mean, it's going to be on the album. It's been around a while. I consistently donate blood. I feel like it's my responsibility because I've gotten a lot more out of it than they've gotten out of me, and they've literally gotten blood from me for it.
My mom always thought that's why Jerry Lewis did the telethon, because he felt guilty for playing a special needs child, making so much money playing a special needs child his entire career.
I mean, This is slightly different. I didn't do it. I've done other jokes too, but the album's not just that bit 15 times. I want to make that clear. But no, that's funny. But yeah, I mean, there is, and I've always enjoyed doing it. It was just, it's actually, I was on my way to a show at the Roundhouse in Aurora, and someone, a salesperson called me and just wouldn't let me off the phone. And I was like, they're really good, And so that's kind of where the idea for it came from. And I always donated blood. But once I started working the bit and doing the bit more and more, it was like, I got to be pretty consistent in how often I go now. Because you want them to be like, this is the uncensored part, right? You want them to be like, bullshit. We've checked his files. That bit he's been doing every night, but he hasn't been here in 3.5 years to donate. And when I went checking the ledger.
You could actually do a tie-in. You could actually do the Jim Flannigan blood drive. I mean,
that's not a bad idea.
That's the kind of tie-in that gets you. They love, the news stations love that shit.
It's not a bad idea.
It's like Jim Flannigan,
the blood donating comic.
You can do blood donation telethons. The Jim Flannigan telethon.
Man. I could Jerry Lewis the hell out of this. You're right. Let's go for it.
Jim Flannigan blood-a-thon.
Let's go for it. I'm in.
It's like, no, we don't want pledges. We want you here. We want you. We got needles.
You got to bleed
needles
for us.
ready.
That's right. We don't want it if you're not bleeding for us. Come on out.
So you're doing Aurora tonight.
I am. I'm doing a little showcase room out there, and that's been a weird thing kind of coming out of the pandemic is, again, recording the weekend before, it's like, all right, now I want to start retiring that stuff, and then I want to start working on the next chapter, And then there's nowhere to do that for a year. There's nowhere to work on that.
So you haven't done nothing?
So I have now. I'm at the point where I'm probably 15, 18 minutes into, new stuff. But even that, some of it has a shelf life, some of it because it's about the situation we've been in for the past year and a half. So it's like you want to get it out there, but you don't necessarily want it to be on an album because it's not timeless.
Right. I can't see people laughing at pandemic jokes much. I think it's beyond the point of funny.
I think it depends on what you do. I never say the word pandemic. I'm not talking about COVID, but I'm talking about we've shared a life experience over the last year and a half, and it's a little bit unique, And just kind of, I think from that perspective, there is some stuff that right now people are like, yeah, it is kind of, I'm a different person than who I was a year and a half ago in so many ways. And just kind of talking about my evolution during that time, I think is a lot more relatable than being like, boy, COVID's weird, isn't it? Because I think if you didn't come out of this a little bit different, you wasted some time, right?
Yeah.
Like if you didn't sit there, if your life changed at all and you didn't reevaluate something, change a little thing, you screwed up. You had a long time to work on it, So I think it is relatable for a lot of people just to kind of talk about what you've done during that time versus what it's done. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are you still bullshit?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I agree. So were you working at all other than the day job, or was it pure day job the entire time? Did you get out at all?
I was like one of the reps of the year. I mean, day job, man, all the time, Jim, concentrating on one thing. It was really interesting for a year, but no, I was doing a little bit.
So your boss actually said, "You see what you could do if you got rid of that silly hobby, Mr. Flannigan."
Really, I mean, there were moments of that, but no, I think it was a combination of really taking stock and going, what can I do differently too, right? That's what I got to say in case they watch, but. But I do think there was I was doing some Zoom shows. I do a lot of corporates and all that just shut down entirely. There were no conventions or things like that. But there was this random popping up of companies that wanted to do something for their employees because you're doing virtual meetings all day and they suck. And you're sitting in front of a screen all day learning stuff, and none of that had stopped during the pandemic for so many of these companies. For a lot of companies, it was busier. So to be able to create a live experience is as hollow as it was compared to being in the room with them. Even seeing people laughing at things you're saying, even if you can't really hear them very well, it's something,
Right.
and it scratches an itch that I think as performers, it didn't go away during the pandemic. So I was able to stay busy enough doing those sporadically. And then the occasional outdoor show last summer and fall, that kind of really helped me start ramping back up when things started opening up again around here.
Do you like working outdoors?
No.
Yeah.
Depends. I think there's a value if everyone's there for the show still, obviously. There are some great spots. There's this group, All That Good Stuff, on the south side that's putting together really cool outdoor shows, intimate venues, patios of bars and things like that, where it's ticketed, everyone's there for comedy. We've all done one time I was at a festival between a Journey cover band and an AC/DC cover band. So the only people paying attention are the people who are like, yeah, I want to watch both of those bands because the Journey fans are leaving, the AC/DC fans are coming in. So there's like 8 sound guys, going, this is what you do? Interesting. And then the AC/DC cover band had technical difficulties. So they were like, hey, can you go a little bit longer? I was like, no, I really can't. I didn't want to do this long, if I'm being honest.
And that's all the more longer we can go. Thank you much, Jim, for coming on to the show.
This has been a blast. I really appreciate you having me. Thanks, Tim.
And you can tune in to Stand Up, Sit Down every Friday and Saturday night at 9:30. Hope to see you then.